Catherine Hardwicke is an American director and screenwriter who graduated from UT Austin. While Hardwicke's movies span a wide variety of themes, her films are often in the dramatic genre as she focuses a lot on complex relationships, coming-of-age adolescent stories, and often female-centered narratives such as these films shown. She's most famous for directing the iconic film Twilight in 2008, which I'm sure many of you know follows the story of Bella Swan, a high school student that moves to the small town of Forks, Washington, where she ends up falling in love with a vampire named Edward Cullen. Hardwicke also directed the film Red Riding Hood in 2011, which is a horror twist on the classic fairy tale story set in a medieval village that's terrorized by a werewolf. The main character named Valerie deals with love and betrayal, and she uncovers some shocking secrets about her town and the werewolf stalking them. Interestingly, both of these dramatic movies follows the very specific trope of a young woman with parental issues who is caught in a supernatural love triangle that involves a werewolf. And while both of these movies are similar, Catherine Hardwicke has a few stylistic techniques she uses in many of her films. For example, Hardwicke utilizes a lot of shaky, moving dolly shots throughout her films to make it seem like the characters are being watched from an outside perspective, which creates an uneasy feeling for the viewer. The movies Red Riding Hood and Twilight are similar in this way. As you can see, this technique is used in both of these supernatural movies to make it seem like the characters in the shot are not the only ones present. Hardwicke also utilizes many establishing shots with magical lighting in her work to really highlight the setting of the forest in both films. For example, Twilight is known for these beautiful shots of the forest that are not only pretty, but also serve an important purpose of creating an intimate, eerie environment which reflects the supernatural themes of the plot. I also noticed that in both films, there were many times and intense moments where Hardwicke uses extreme close-up shots to the actor's eyes to really capture and elevate the heat of the moment. An example of this is in Red Riding Hood when the widow of a man that had died looks straight into Valerie's eyes to convey her extreme pain and suffering of the moment, with the extreme close-up shot adding so much emotion to the scene. Lastly, the stylistic choice of the non-diegetic music that she chooses to incorporate really heightens the intensity of the situation in both films. For example, listen to the uneasy music she uses here. This scene wouldn't be nearly as intense if it weren't for this powerful combination of instrumental sounds. This same scene with happy music wouldn't be nearly as scary, showing the importance of this stylistic choice. Furthermore, take a look at this scene in Twilight.
I know what you are.
Say it. Out loud. Say it.
Vampire.
First off, the wide tilt shots of the towering trees in the forest, along with the dim and desaturated lighting, create the perfect isolated and otherworldly atmosphere that highlights the dark and uncertain direction that Bella's life is taking. The extreme close-ups highlight Edward's vulnerability and internal conflict of the situation, as this tense scene solidifies the central theme of forbidden love and sets the stage for the supernatural conflict and romance that drives the rest of the story. Catherine Hardwicke has also made some technical advancements to cinematography as a whole. For example, throughout the movie in Twilight, Hardwicke used a digital color grading to give the movie a muted look that makes all the characters look cold and kinda sad. This enhanced the supernatural and eerie mood of the movie, influencing other films to use the similar color desaturations that made Twilight so iconic. She also used a lot of digital effects in her movies, like in Red Riding Hood, where she uses digital effects to show the super strength of the werewolf that kills a bunch of people, or again in Twilight with the iconic baseball scene that uses a plethora of digital effects to demonstrate the supernatural powers of the vampires. Despite being otherworldly, Hardwicke's use of these digital effects was so impactful in the world of cinematography, and they are part of what makes her movies stand out. Overall, her movies are very significant contributions to cinema. Twilight is obviously an extremely iconic movie that took the 2000s by storm, and people often credit this movie for causing mainstream success of young adult movies that cater more to teenage audiences, with the series of Hunger Games and Divergent becoming extremely popular after the Twilight explosion. Twilight is also often credited for sparking the massive fan-based culture of movies, with thousands and thousands of fans getting tattoos, creating fan art, making book clubs, and going feral over the characters, which just shows how significant Hardwicke's movies are towards cinema. In conclusion, I really enjoyed watching her movies, as her filming style really works to highlight emotional intensity and complex relationships with dynamic visuals that create the atmosphere of the story. Catherine Hardwicke has paved the way for female directors in Hollywood, and she's been an important advocate for more female perspectives in mainstream filmmaking.